Many practice owners develop a bad relationship with paying themselves. When they're new, they pay themselves very little because that's all there is. As the practice grows, they could pay more and graduate up to paying themselves what they need. Most stay there, though, but what they need is almost always less than what they're worth. They should be paying themselves what they're worth. And my guest today helps her clients break through that barrier and realize the compensation they should get. I'm Carl White, principal at Market Advisory Group, which is a healthcare marketing agency, and I'm also the host of Practice Care. The mission for both is the same, and that's to help private practice owners stay private, and paying yourself what you're worth is one of those elements. Usually staying private is what the private practice owner wants anyway. And you've heard me say this before, care is better when the provider owns the practice because they get to make all the decisions around patients they think are best, both clinical and otherwise. It's not always the same when somebody else owns the practice, whether it's a hospital, a health system, private equity owners in faraway lands, whoever they may be. Their agenda starts to creep in, puts more pressure on the provider, or it can. Let's just keep it simple and keep it all private. My guest today, my returning guest today, is Michelle O'Connor. Michelle is a believer in following one's dreams, and she's risen from an inner city community to a life of abundance. With corporate expertise in strategic planning and execution, she helps entrepreneurs achieve their goals. Michelle supports organizations through strategic processes, coaching entrepreneurs to develop action plans for success. She's facilitated strategic planning retreats in Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and the Dominican Republic, and has reached hundreds through her purpose-driven conference. Her current mission is to help medical private practice owners create sustainable practices. As a wife and mother, she strives for a brighter future, motivated by the philosophy Ad Astra Per Aspera, which I'm going to ask you what that means. But thank you for coming back to Practice Care.
Thank you so much for having me back, Carl. It's always good when we sit and talk. It's almost like we're having a coffee chat.
Yeah, exactly. Two people with earmuffs and microphones. And on maybe the coldest day of the year so far, I'm in Chicago. You're north of me, so it's at least as cold, I would think.
Yeah.
But here we are talking about paying yourself what you're worth, not only what you need.
Yes.
But before we get into that, that was a pretty good bio, but it's kind of short. That's what I asked for. Fill in the gaps for us and tell us what Ad Astra Per Aspera, at least for me, what that means.
Okay, so that is to the stars through difficult times. And that for me really resonates because I think a lot of times when we're in moments of uncertainty or most challenging times, that's where our creative juices starts to flow and we start thinking outside of the box. What else can I create? What else can I do? And so whenever those difficult moments arise, I think of, okay, when I come out of this, I'm going to pass the clouds. I'm heading to the stars.
Okay. There's a brighter future tomorrow. I love it. Okay. Okay. So how'd you get into this? I mean, you work with private practice owners. You've been coaching. I say you and I both sort of did time in corporate refugees. But how'd you get from there to here?
So while I was in corporate, I was leading strategic planning and I would travel, as you read in the bio, throughout the Caribbean to lead strategic planning session for the business owners within our company. And I realized that even though, like, for example, we would go to Dominican Republic, even though they spoke Spanish, the needs of business owners are the same. And along with that, I had friends who had businesses and I'm looking on them operating their business and I'm like, you're missing this piece, you're missing this piece. But I got to realize that they really don't have the time. When you are the CEO and we both operate our own business, we have to be intentional around finding that time to plan and think about tomorrow and think about next year, think about your clients. And it's how could I now add all this experience I've had to entrepreneurs. And I started serving entrepreneurs back in 2018 and got a few clients who were doctors and kept hearing the same thing. Michelle, we did not do business in medical school.
No.
And so I started to, I realized there were a lot of, oh my God, I didn't know that. And in my head, I'm like, but that's simple. But I got to realize that they needed that support. And my aim along with underlining everything I do is how do I help persons to achieve their goals?
Okay.
So that's where I come from when I'm serving them.
Yeah. What is obvious to one is not another. It's funny. I'll talk to clients sometimes and I'll hear these stories of a patient, came in and said X and I say to myself, it sounds kind of obvious. She's like, and it's so obvious, but not to everybody. So that's why there's specialization, why different professions exist. Yeah.
every field there's specialization. Never doubt what you
Exactly.
have, right?
Exactly. You know, take the Tylenol, whatever it is. So pay yourself what you're worth, not only what you need. Man, this is a big topic. Any business owner struggles with this in
Yes.
healthcare or otherwise. And, you know, one of the things I just want to dispel right away is the easy response to this is to say, well, you know, I'm a startup. I'm just starting out. We don't have much revenue yet. Fair enough. We're not talking about that. We're talking about situations where there's an opportunity to pay yourself what you're worth or more what you're worth
Yeah.
rather than what you need. So the more uh maybe the more common, the more challenging one than just say, well, the math doesn't add up, right? So what we're going to talk about today is look, either the math already does, or there's some things you could do to make it better, so that you can pay yourself what you're worth. But I just want to start with how common is this in your experience that
It's
you know, they're underpay. People are practice owners are underpaying themselves.
it's so common. I don't think maybe 90% of the doc physicians are paying themselves properly. And
Hmm.
it comes from a number of places. It's sometimes mental,
Hmm.
meaning I don't think I'm worth more, or I don't think I should be charging more. We work with private practice owners, and I wrote down, what you said is care is better when the practice is owned. So these are the persons we're talking about, where you own your practice, you can set your parameters, how you serve your patients.
Hmm.
Now, what I found is the reason it's common, one, I shared earlier, persons, they are not thinking from a business standpoint. They're thinking from, I'm offering care, and
Hmm.
that's what I'm doing. I show up every day to do that. So
Hmm.
that's one, the business aspect is missing. And two, how can I?
Hmm.
What does that look like?
Yeah.
I am just here to serve. I'm just here to do the minimum. So it's okay. It's okay. But when you truly get into talking to these private practice owners, there are other things that they want to do in life. There are other dreams that they have, or even their family have, that
Right.
that they're bringing to the table. But I can't do it because mommy or daddy is here and that's all they want to do. They want to show up, and if the patients can pay, they pay, or just we can get into the
Yeah,
long.
we'll get
I
yeah.
find that's
Yeah.
those are two other common reasons.
Yeah. I've seen s- plenty that do, but plenty that don't. And it's sort of this variety of reasons of, well, you know, it's I'm here to serve, and because it's healthcare, just like you
Mhm.
said, you really can't charge them for that. It doesn't seem right. It doesn't feel right. And let's also, I want to sort of get on the table to say that we're not looking at, or we are considering in this conversation, for those who are saying, but my insurance contracts say I get X. We agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
We're not going to come here and say, well, just start charging more. Like, if you can't, right? We'll just go renegotiate your contracts. It's not so simple always.
No.
And so we're not ignoring those things at all. Um, Nevertheless, yeah, I mean, there's a variety of reasons why, but it's pretty common, and we're going to try to get into some. So what do you find drives it? That drives this underpay? Because after a while, you do something for a while, you adjust to it, and you kind of forget about it.
Yeah.
I think, another one is because you get used to it, right? Um, it's this, what's healthcare worth, and what's, uh, hey, listener, it's worth more than, if you feel you're underpaying yourself, it's worth more. Um, Even you can't clinically prove it,
Right.
but nevertheless, it is worth more. But what do you see? What are the drivers?
I wanted to just add something.
Hmm.
Before I answer that, I have a client who, one of the things she was saying to me is she's booked 6 days of the week,
Mm.
but she's not even being paid 50% of her salary.
Hmm.
So what I realize is,
In other words, she pretty much needs to double. Like,
yeah.
you're saying she should double. She's worth double.
And in her mind, she's thinking, Michelle, I'm already booked. There's absolutely no way. And I know we talk a lot about planning. A lot of times what drives it is persons who are doctors have sometimes some of them have they don't have a clear picture as to what their
Hmm.
business. Now, you own a private practice is now a business. They have no idea what it's generating.
Hmm.
They have no idea where their source of revenue is coming from.
Hmm.
Because they're constantly booked, they're serving what their patients are asking for immediately, but they have zero time to kind of think through, is there an underlying cause as for something else that I can share on? So let's take an example. A dentist, you're cleaning teeth. But there are lots of people, I've met persons who have not been to the dentist in maybe like 5 years. And I'm like, how can you? Because they have a fear. And I wrote this in a free ebook that I had. They fear the dentist chair. And if you're a dentist and you decide, you know what, let me target those people. How different would that be for you? You know, you're offering a service that's a little bit different than just cleaning teeth or doing extractions. So it's really about planning. They don't understand what their business is generating. They don't know what it takes. They don't know which one of their service offerings are most profitable. So because of that, you really just have to take what you get.
Right.
And if you're able to sit and think through, where is the money coming from? Or not even, let's not talk about money, because we don't want to just make it about money. What are the needs of people who are walking through my door?
So what you're doing, yeah, because you have two examples there. And I've got a client in a similar boat. So if you look at a profit and loss statement, right, the salary expense is somewhere in the middle. You're climbing up and saying, well, our sales is revenue what it could be. So let's take your first example, the client who's fully booked but still isn't paying herself what she's worth. I've got a client, the same thing, 7 a.m. till 7 p.m, 5.5 days a week. It's just, I look at that, I go, but there are more hours in the day. And we've had conversations like bring on a second clinician.
Yeah.
Because there are more hours. Like this just, at the way things currently going, unless the reimbursed rates double or triple or whatever, here you are. Like, it's very certain. And unless you're just fearful and your savings account is massive and you could be paying yourself that, your business model currently is maxed out. So what you're saying is the only way, practically speaking, that you're going to be able to pay yourself more is if you sell more, right? If the revenue gets higher. So are there other profitable treatments? Are there different ways? Can you add staff and sort of, air quotes, make revenue off of them, kind of sort of the way it works? So that's one way. So for those whose math is accurate, look, I just can't pay myself more. Then you got to climb up your profit and loss statement to say, how can I increase revenue?
And that's the question that we get to ask ourselves. I had a doctor that I worked with, and for her, it was, we are not able to make any more money. I worked with her to look at the services she was offering. What care are you offering? She had 3 offices. I'm like, okay, are these offices profitable? She's never thought of that. We said, okay, how can we make the offices profitable? You have 2 nurses. Do you need to be the one starting all the procedures? Can the nurse start? Do you need to be involved in the procedure any at all? So when we worked that through, she realized that, oh my God, she was spending so much of her time where she could be using the staff, you mentioned she could be using the staff that she had. Another thing that happened, the numbers that the patients were messaging was a phone that she managed. She would be late for her appointments because in the morning she wakes up, she's answering all of those calls. I'm like, let's talk about training. If you're paid for your staff to be responding to the messages, let's get them up to speed. Her mornings were now free. So sometimes what's happening is we aren't seeing our blind spots. We're just seeing what we've been seeing for the past 10 years or how many years we've had our private practice. When you have someone looking at the thing from outside, they're like, but why are you doing that? What are you not doing? So with particular doctor, we were able to, one, look at our offices, work on making them profitable. And then we're so excited. They were like, oh my God, I get to own this. So they know we're able to start procedures, continue procedures. She came in at the end or the beginning for consultation, take off some of the admin work. And the other thing is, you're in marketing. Her website was crowded with so many things that people confused. Let's zone in on the areas that tell me what patients ask you for when they come into your office, and that is what we put out. And life became so much simpler for her. It's like she didn't go back to school and learn anything. It was just about reorganizing how you're set up. So sometimes there are no more hours in the day, but what you're offering and how you're packaging your offer, from how persons are trained, the nursing staff, that kind of thing, it can be completely different.
So it sounded like in that example, a big part of it was the physician. So the physician, was the one who sort of, by virtue of seeing patients, generates revenue. And it sounded like the physician was doing some number of tasks that was not patient facing, and therefore, so you freed up the physician's time through a
Yep.
variety of, efficiencies and things, so that in the same number of hours per day, more patients could be
Yeah.
seen. And there it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's lesson number one, physicians X, Y, and Z in a practice is the most amount of time per day being spent on the things that generate revenue for the practice or not. And if they're not, like I've met these guys, their company, they do floor plan layouts. And essentially, I mean, here was the example they gave. Dr. X, I'll say, is a dermatologist,
Yeah.
and every visit on average is worth X. Simply by relaying out, simply, it's a bigger deal, but by
Yeah.
relaying out the physical location of the treatment rooms versus non-treatment rooms, and cutting out the amount of travel time between rooms and whatever else, if the typical appointment's 15 minutes and you can free up 30 minutes from that, there's two more appointments multiplied by the number. And all of a sudden it becomes real numbers,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So even before, layer number one of generate more revenue, um, is every hour that could be spent treating patients and in revenue generating activities actually being spent that way. And that's not creating more hours in a day, so to speak. It's not telling this person who's fully booked, just see more patients. By adding more hours onto your schedule, it's freeing up the time. Okay. So that's
Yeah.
level number one. And then
And
level
that,
number
that,
two is, what more services can you add? Like, all right, that's all maxed out. Now
yeah.
what? Now what?
No
But
one.
if that solves it, okay. So, but what about for the people who they feel like they're there, and it's more of a uh, like more of a mindset thing.
Mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. So what about them? Like
You
how do you,
know,
man, I just, that almost seems harder to break than let's
that's hard to
reallocate how
do.
time is spent. That's a very sort of mechanical thing. Now you're talking about a mental thing.
Yeah.
Um,
You know, I had to, it wasn't until I did a leadership training back in 2020 that I truly got to understand that underlying value
mhm,
based thinking that we have.
mhm,
And we do it so much. I do it a lot of times. This is all I can get. It takes more work than it's just saying that than just saying, hey, charge more.
mhm,
But I find that persons who are in service-based businesses, like you're a service person, I'm willing to give. It's like a nurse. That's their personality type.
mhm,
I am here to serve and I am here to give. I do not need anything more. One
mhm,
of the questions I normally ask persons is, if what you're getting, you want to serve, and if you want to serve, how long do you want to serve for? Based on what you're taking. So this is not a math problem. You can be paid more.
mhm.
Based on what you're getting now, can that enable you to continue to serve persons the way you're serving them?
Yeah.
And most of the time it's no, but there's still a but. There's still an underline, but I can't.
Yeah.
So if you want to be able to show up for persons, you want to be able to serve them, then you're going to need to pay yourself more so you can do more things. We were
Mhm.
talking earlier about linking it to corporate. And I think, in terms of even how I look at a practice from the outside, I use a lot of my corporate experience as well, because
Same.
our board members give us a target and we're like, oh my God, we are not going to meet this target.
Yeah.
We aren't leaving the boardroom until we figure out a way to do it with what we have.
Mhm.
So when I think about, persons who are, think about physicians who are talking, and I was sharing experience about, getting a package from a corporate. At my office, we had a daycare, or we call it a nursery back home,
Mhm.
and our kids are there. So when I would pick up my son from school, I take him to the nursery. He's fed, he has a shower, he eats, he
Mhm.
goes to the playground. Guess what? They are giving me comfort, so I am able to focus on my job.
Yeah.
Same thing if you're a physician. Are there needs of your family that's not being met because of a mindset that you have?
Yeah.
Are there desires that you have for life that you have not been able to achieve because of that mindset that you have? And it's not about taking, it's about giving to you so you can be filled up, so you can pour out more.
Yeah.
You be more present. When you take a vacation, or let's not even talk about take a vacation, you get
Mhm.
a good night's sleep. You wake up the next day, you feel like you're a brand new person. And it's the
Yeah.
same. If you're able to give yourself more, it's not taking away, it's giving so you can give more. And
Yeah.
some, we have those conversations, and then I go, there are persons who help you with this. I may not be the right person,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's a mindset thing. And also the conversation sometimes get to persons are coming in, they can't afford they can't afford for the care, so I don't want to let them go, so I
Yeah.
still do. But will your practice continue?
Yeah.
Who are you hurting? And not to say you can't, but maybe an idea is, how can we probably set up a foundation, or how can we run something so you can have something in the bucket to
Yeah.
serve those persons who aren't able to afford their health care,
Yeah.
but the business is still operating. So at both ends, it's coming in and looking at those blind spots. What can you do? Maybe there's somebody. I'll wrap up the response with this question. My mom lived in Cayman for years. And when she was
Hmm.
diagnosed with cancer, one of the facilities there, she could get like her PET scan and all those things done for free.
Hmm.
What eventually happened was, Cayman is pretty small. The wealthy persons, their relatives started having cancer. And
Mm.
now it became something that was widespread and not really concentrated in one area. So you find that all of these facilities are now set up that's funded by persons who are wealthy because they wanted to give back. When you start thinking about it like that, who
Yeah.
do I have in my circle that I can tap into and say, hey, I have these patients who are coming in and they really can't afford care. I don't want to turn them back, but my practice won't be able to function, or I won't be able to survive if I don't charge. What can we do together?
Yeah.
That now becomes, how can I give more, instead of, oh, I'm not going to take anything else. So it's both ways that it can
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. And there's a lot of like things that I've heard, the sort of you know, when you're in medical school, when you're in training, um, I've had enough guests say to me, we're made to feel um, that it's not the greatest thing to earn money from what we do, and so these little seeds are planted,
Yeah.
and let's face it, it's a certain profile that goes into a
Yep.
helping profession
Yep.
anyway.
Yep.
And this is not for everybody, of course, but it's for a pretty good chunk of the bell curve. And now you're out here and you know, well, what I do is actually worth it. Well, worth what? And
Yeah.
there's the next question. Well, I don't exactly know. And sort of, we're in a science-based profession where you want to know exactly. Well, that's never going to get, I mean, one place you can look at is, find out what an employed version of yourself hired by somebody else, what's the salary? You
Yeah.
can look it up. What's the market rate? Maybe there's a target. Well, if you worked over there, you'd be worth it.
Yeah.
So what about applying that to yourself? And even if
Yeah.
you can't necessarily hit that number right away, you could sort of periodically increase your pay and kind of, stair step up to that number. But if other people, what's it worth? What's your care worth to an individual patient? There's no way to figure that out in terms of salary other than what, reimbursement says or what you can charge. But so the market rate's tough, but there are data points out there, and maybe that's a way to just say, well, if somebody else thinks we're worth that, and if I would go work at that hospital or health system or for them, then I must think it too because I'd take the job.
Yes.
So
And
so there it is. And so, but it's this mental thing of, self-talk and, take a look back at your time in school and say, why did they say that? Or why did
yeah.
they deliver that message? And what's their salary? Those
Yeah.
professors are saying it because I'll bet you they're getting paid pretty well. And
They're
so
getting paid
why,
pretty well.
yeah,
And if I
why?
if I can just add that,
Yeah.
one of the things that I had to do when I did that session, that leadership session, was to think about, I was designing the vision for my life, and it was about, what are my beliefs? Where did those come from?
Hmm.
It's like, when I was growing up, children should be seen and not heard. So
Hmm.
guess what that did for me? I
Hmm.
close my mouth. If I'm in
Hmm.
class and I have the answer, I am not answering until I'm 100% correct, or when
Hmm.
I'm called upon. So it's getting to, when you shared it, that came to me. Where did that belief come from? Why did they tell me that I shouldn't be thinking about money? And on the point of looking at, if you could be employed, I've had physicians who, they have said to me, oh, but I have a physician who comes in, we're doing revenue share, and they're earning way money than me. maybe I should just close this practice and go and work for somebody else. And I had to pause and I have to say, you are paying them. You are the one who is paying them. So, it really
You
comes
could
back.
pay yourself too. Yeah.
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 And I don't want to, then there's no money there. And yes, it's really a mental thing.
Yeah. Well, suppose you did.
Yeah.
Another thing, and I'm guilty of this too, is, oh, I couldn't afford that. Well, whether you can or can't, let's put that aside and say, what if, I mean, we're recording this in January of 2025. What if you gave yourself I don't know, an X% salary, a raise? When's the last time you gave yourself a raise? How about every year you give yourself a raise before you give others, and just, build the new habit, right? I
Yeah.
mean, build a new habit. You can certainly do that.
Yes.
You can look at other ways of compensating yourself, get with your accountant. And I know we're just sort of spitballing here, but, think about your total compensation, not necessarily just your salary, because it all counts. But, if it's, I can't, I won't, I'm not, we shouldn't. Anybody says, well, we shouldn't, man, you got to relook at that one. And
And
I'm a business owner, you're a
yeah,
business owner. We are all
we're
can't really
all guilty.
afford that. It's just like this reflex of got to pay the others. And yes, you do have to pay your bills. But you're also an employee, just like all your
Yeah.
other employees, if you have them, and you're going to pay them to keep them. So yeah, it's just, I'll get to it later. There's another one.
Yeah.
If only I hit X, then we'll start paying.
And then you hit X and then you find all different kind of market statistics that's going to impact the X that you
Right.
hit quarter.
Right.
It's not
Right.
going to come again next quarter, so you can't spend it. And what we don't realize is happening is that mindset trickles down to people who we work with or even within our families.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not just a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I go by and I have to remind myself that this is something I go by as well, is that how you do one thing is how you do everything or most things.
Right.
That is the same mindset that you're giving to others within your team without even realizing it. You
Right.
may give them the salary increase, but is that what they really want? I
Mm-hmm.
work with a physician where her team, they didn't have health insurance. And that is something that they wanted. So what was happening is they were taking a lot of sick days off.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what is it going to, it's going to cost too much. I'm like, who said that?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until sitting with her accountant that she realized that it's something that she could afford, and it made them feel so much more valued.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sometimes that mindset, it goes down to our team
Yeah.
and impacts productivity and impacts how person show up for work, impacts the service that your patients
Yeah.
experience. It's a loop. It continues.
It's interesting you say, because a number of sections within the world of healthcare practitioners, part of the reason you're drawn there is you have a more analytical mind than the average person. So apply the same analytics, or at least the desire to get to the
Yeah.
data, to
Yeah.
yourself. Can I really
Yeah.
afford that, whatever it is?
You're testing the hypothesis.
Yeah, yeah. So just to kind of recap, so pay yourself, what you're worth, not only what you need. The first thing we said was, put the salary aside per se for a second and look at the practice.
Yeah.
Are you the revenue generator? Are all revenue generators spending? Is the practice optimized so that
Yeah.
they're spending the most amount of time that they can generating the revenue? And if
Revenue.
they're not, we used to call it a corporate value creating activities. We
Yes.
want to make sure that whatever for every budget dollar we spent, was it as far as we could tell going towards the highest return that we
Mhm.
that we could imagine. So you are the revenue generator, Dr. X. And if you have other revenue generators in the practice, are they allocated to whatever it is that generates the most revenue most often,
Mhm.
appropriately or not? And if they're not, work on that first, because that might be maybe it's the lower hanging fruit.
I was about to use that term, or corporate
Yeah,
that
I
is
know
coming
our
out.
corporate. Man, they just pull you back in. I know. But then if that's really optimized, then no, then it's just why aren't I paying myself more?
Yeah.
If I went and worked for somebody else, what would they pay? Go on, you could figure that out. That's publicly available stuff. Why aren't I paying myself that? If the numbers truly aren't there and you've optimized everything, climb back up. Should we be looking at the services we offer? Should we be, not that these are easy questions to answer, but they're fair questions to
They
ask,
are.
you know? And if the money truly isn't there, well, then you're either here you are, or you've got to figure out a different business model or adjustments to try
Yeah.
to generate more revenue somehow.
Yeah.
But then if all that's in place, then it's probably the hardest one, which is why am I treating myself this way? Why do I react to, why is my reaction I can't or I shouldn't or I won't?
Yeah.
When I think
And that
about,
mindset.
I'd like to see a bigger number in my bank account every other week or whenever you get
Mhm.
paid. Yeah. It's a lot of ground. Again, appropriate to ask, not so easy to answer.
And
But that's a good roadmap.
yes, it is. And any question that you're asking, there's someone out there who can answer it for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing is, first you get to ask yourself the question and you utilize the resources that you have, whether it's
Mhm.
your team sometimes can tell you, we're printing all these forms and our patients are only completing 3 questions on it. Or do we really need to print it?
Mhm.
Your team, they are in front of your patient and
Yeah.
they're sitting in the waiting area, they're on the phones talking to people, or they're talking amongst themselves. Your team has the answer. So if you can't find it within your circle,
Mhm.
then there is someone that what we do, well, I do it, I'm sure you and other business owners do it. We look for persons who are doing what we are doing at a higher level.
Yeah.
And we think of, okay, what are they doing that I'm not doing?
And I
Can
just got what you said. Yeah, like look at the expenses too. I mean,
I,
in terms of like optimizing the practice, there's your time, revenue generating, but every year, every so often, you should take a look at what are we spending money on,
yeah,
and could we be spending it any better? And for those where the answer is yes, all right, is it worth the switch?
yeah,
And if you really feel you're underpaying yourself, every dollar of the switch that's saved should go into your pocket for salary.
yeah,
Unless there's some huge other thing. It's kind of presumptuous for me to say that, but on the top of the priority list is if we save $5,000 by switching how we do this from this way to that way, I'm pocketing it. I'm going to
right.
pocket that one. Yeah.
We are
I
and
just gave myself a raise. I have to. Yeah.
gave yourself a and I do this a lot. As a mom, the minute you see something in the store that you like, sometimes you're like, no, you're thinking about the kids, you're thinking about what else they would need. There are days I go, I deserve this.
Mhm.
You tell
Yes.
yourself
We are
that and
spectacularly capable of putting ourselves last.
putting ourselves last. So we
Yeah.
all, we're not here saying we have the formula down pat 100%. But when you said that, that reminded me of, how our minds work and what we think.
Mhm.
And when you look at this is another part that persons are not happy about. Look at your profit and loss statement. Just look at 3 or 4 numbers.
Mhm.
Where are your expenses?
Mhm.
What's your profit margin? What would
Mhm.
happen if that profit margin went from 22 to 20 and that
Mhm.
2% is now you get to, look around and see how it is that you can
Yeah,
put yourself first a little bit more.
absolutely. Absolutely. So we've covered a lot of ground. Look at the top line, look at your expenses, look at yourself. Um, Anything you think we missed? We covered a lot, but anything you think we
Yeah,
missed?
we've covered a lot. I think we've covered most of what persons would need to do. I think the most important thing is for, physicians to know that it is possible.
Mhm.
And there is, just about any number. I tell myself this, any number that you desire is possible. There is someone out there who can help you to figure it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And the life I come from within and out. Think about the life that you desire for yourself and your family, your loved ones, whoever the persons are around you.
Yeah.
And then you layer your business onto that. What do I need to do or who do I need to be? How, I want to serve society in this kind of way.
Yeah.
What are the things I need to have in place? The challenge for us a lot of times is that we start from the whole.
Mhm.
If you put a goal out there, you start thinking, okay, how am I going to do it? No, 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 no. This is the roadmap. We touched on roadmap, the strategy that you have.
Yeah.
Then once that has been decided, the how will it will work out. And it comes, I speak confidently about it because I have seen us in corporate like shatter some goals, Carl, that
Yeah.
we never in a million years would think that we would have shattered. We made it through the financial meltdown
Yeah.
and we were like, whoa. Even during the pandemic, we had just come, our financial year starts in April, and we had completed our budgeting process March.
Mm-hmm.
That was when we had our first case when I was in Jamaica. And it all went through the door. We redid the complete strategy and performed, reduced all our
Mm-hmm.
targets, and we performed even better than we planned
Yeah.
pre-pandemic. So
Yeah.
I know that whatever it is that you desire to achieve is possible
Yeah.
once the mind is there, and get yourself somebody who can support you and, you know,
Yeah.
accountable and keep you moving.
Yeah.
But it is possible once
Yeah.
you think about it and think about your work, think about your service, think about how you want to show up in this world, and that people are waiting on you, and
Yeah.
not telling yourselves what you're worth doesn't, it's no guarantee, because we all have an end date in this world. But for the time that we are, how do I want to show up my best and give my best service?
Yeah. Yeah. And then, the other question is, how can somebody get started? And this is a big one. And I guess the thing I would say is, you said earlier, don't focus on the how to. I think the number one how is I got to find somebody who
Yeah,
can help me. And that's
that's the
like
hope.
that's a like a business coach. Maybe
Yeah,
your account. Some accountants are quite good at this, or maybe they know people, but really you're looking for. I just feel like, and really, how do you know if this is you? If To me, I guess the question is, if you were to ask yourself, do I have like my finger on the pulse of the finances?
yeah,
Revenue and where it comes from, not granular, what my top two or three major
yeah,
expense items are. And if your answer is, if you live on insurance, do I know what my days outstanding are when I collect or
mm,
not? These three or four questions. If the answer is no or not sure, it wouldn't surprise me if you're
yeah,
one of these people who just is also not paying yourself enough because you're not sure if you can. And those are knowable things.
yeah,
And you know, plenty of practice owners have gotten wrapped their arms around this stuff, and now they're quite confident in their numbers.
and feel so
Uh
empowered. It's so empowering when you know
yeah.
the information, right? As a practice owner, you should be able to say,
And
you know,
I'll go out on a limb and I'll say there's probably a pretty good correlation between those who feel like they're not paying themselves enough with those who aren't quite sure of the
yeah,
financial side and the business side of
yeah,
their practice. And that those who have a really good feel have a better chance of sort of paying themselves better to the extent the money is there to do so.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's
Yeah.
so much you can know about your numbers. So I completely agree. Just know three or four. We're not asking you to become accountants. And
Mm-hmm.
the other thing on that is have conversations with your accountants.
Mm-hmm.
I know there are persons who are just completing the financials so you can file your taxes, but then there are persons who are offering you financial management conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Profit margin means X and Y.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make this big investment, this is how it's going to impact your numbers. Or when you have your fingers on the pulse, you know your peak season and you know your low season. So you don't get,
Mm-hmm.
alarmed when things are low, because you know it's going to pick up. So it's getting familiar with your numbers. As a CEO, I say to persons at any point in time, you should be able to say, this is how much I'm earning in profit. Of every
Mm-hmm.
dollar that I make, I am making 30%, 60%, whatever that number is in profit. So
Yeah.
you're going to make a decision. It's
Mm-hmm.
an easy math. It's a few cents from the dollar. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really important to have
Yeah.
your fingers on the pulse. And if you're listening to the podcast and you're thinking, if you even said,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that may
And,
be,
one other parting piece of advice is that there are plenty of advisors out there, financial marketing, business, whatever, coaches who specialize not only in healthcare, but in your piece of healthcare, medical, dental, whatever. Those are the people you want.
yeah,
Um, don't go generalist, because there's just differences and between the experience and the expertise, and particularly if you throw insurance and reimbursement in the mix, it's
yeah,
different than, I don't know, a restaurant or whatever, where
yeah,
that's just, it's just that doesn't exist. And those
yeah,
things matter. And so if you're going to get advice, just get some experience advice in the world of healthcare. Um,
completely agree.
Michelle, yeah, thank you for coming up. Big topic. I knew this was big, but I didn't appreciate just how big. I mean, now that we said it, I did. I didn't have all the facets. So very good. I hope we've caught some listeners' attention. I hope we've helped out a bit with this episode, like all of them. And thank you for coming back to Practice Care for this topic.
Thank you so much. It's also a pleasure being here talking with you.
Yeah, I enjoy it. And you gave us contact information, which we're going to put in the show notes to the episode. So anybody who wants to get a hold of you now has another way to do it. A couple of quick points before we wrap up. First, please subscribe to Practice Care. Practice Care is one word. We're everywhere: Apple, Spotify, YouTube. We're on every player. Practice Care is one word. Subscribe because we do a new episode every week, and that's the easiest way to stay up to date. And also, if you're someone like Michelle or I and you serve private practice owners, or you're a private practice owner yourself, either way, you've got some wisdom to share about the business side of private practice that you think others would benefit from. We really want you to come on Practice Care and tell the world about it. In the show notes for Michelle's episode and every episode, there's a link, a couple of clicks. Tell us what's on your mind so that we can get you scheduled as soon as possible. Thanks very much. And until next time.